Article I-12. Categories of competence. 1. When the Constitution confers on the Union exclusive competence in a specific area, only the Union may legislate and adopt legally binding acts, the member states being able to do so themselves only, if so empowered by the Union, or for the implementation of Union acts. 2. When the Constitution confers on the Union a competence shared with the member states in a specific area, the Union and the member states may legislate and adopt legally binding acts in that area. The member states shall exercise their competence to the extent that the Union has not exercised or has decided to cease exercising its competence. 3. The member states shall coordinate their economic and employment policies within arrangements as determined by Part 3, which the Union shall have competence to provide. 4. The Union shall have competence to define and implement a common foreign and security policy, including the progressive framing of a common defense policy. 5. In certain areas, and under the conditions laid down in the Constitution, the Union shall have competence to carry out actions to support, coordinate or supplement the actions of the member states, without thereby superseding their competence in these areas. Legally binding acts of the Union adopted on the basis of the provisions in Part 3, relating to these areas shall not entail harmonization of member states' laws or regulations. 6. The scope of, and arrangements for exercising the Union's competences, shall be determined by the provisions, relating to each area in Part 3. Article I-13. Areas of exclusive competence. 1. The Union shall have exclusive competence in the following areas: a. Customs Union, b. The establishing of the competition rules necessary for the functioning of the internal market, c. Monetary policy for the member states, whose currency is the euro, d. The conservation of marine biological resources under the Common Fisheries Policy, treaty establishing a constitution for Europe. 21. E. Common commercial policy. 2. The Union shall also have exclusive competence for the conclusion of an international agreement, when its conclusion is provided for in a legislative act of the Union, or is necessary to enable the Union to exercise its internal competence, or insofar as its conclusion may affect common rules, or alter their scope. Article I-14. Areas of shared competence. 1. The Union shall share competence with the member states, where the Constitution confers on it a competence, which does not relate to the areas referred to in Articles I-13 and I-17. 2. Shared competence between the Union and the member states applies in the following principal areas: a. Internal market, b. Social policy, for the aspects defined in Part 3, c. Economic, social and territorial cohesion, d. Agriculture and fisheries, excluding the conservation of marine biological resources, e. Environment, f. Consumer protection, g. Transport, h. Trans-European networks, i. Energy, j. Area of freedom, security and justice, k. Common safety concerns and public health matters, for the aspects defined in Part 3. 3. In the areas of research, technological development, and space, the Union shall have competence to carry out activities, in particular to define and implement programs. However, the exercise of that competence shall not result in member states being prevented from exercising theirs. 4. In the areas of development cooperation and humanitarian aid, the Union shall have competence to carry out activities and conduct a common policy. However, the exercise of that competence shall not result in member states being prevented from exercising theirs. 22 Part I Article I-15. The coordination of economic and employment policies. 1. The member states shall coordinate their economic policies within the Union. To this end, the Council of Ministers shall adopt measures, in particular broad guidelines for these policies. Specific provisions shall apply to those member states whose currency is the euro. 2. The Union shall take measures to ensure coordination of the employment policies of the member states, in particular by defining guidelines for these policies. 3. The Union may take initiatives to ensure coordination of member states' social policies. Article I-16. The Common Foreign and Security Policy. 1. The Union's competence in matters of common foreign and security policy shall cover all areas of foreign policy, and all questions relating to the Union's security, including the progressive framing of a common defense policy that might lead to a common defense. 2. Member states shall actively and unreservedly support the Union's common foreign and security policy in a spirit of loyalty and mutual solidarity, and shall comply with the Union's action in this area. They shall refrain from action contrary to the Union's interests, or likely to impair its effectiveness. Article I-17. Areas of supporting, coordinating or complementary action. The Union shall have competence to carry out supporting, coordinating or complementary action. The areas of such action shall, at European level, be a. Protection and improvement of human health, b. Industry, c. Culture, d. Tourism, e. Education, youth, sport and vocational training, f. Civil protection, g. Administrative cooperation. Treaty establishing a constitution for Europe. 23 Article I-18. Flexibility Clause. 1. If action by the Union should prove necessary, within the framework of the policies defined in Part 3, to attain one of the objectives set out in the Constitution, and the Constitution has not provided the necessary powers, the Council of Ministers, acting unanimously on a proposal from the European Commission, and after obtaining the consent of the European Parliament, shall adopt the appropriate measures. 2. Using the procedure for monitoring the subsidiarity principle referred to in Article I-11(3), the European Commission shall draw national parliaments' attention to proposals based on this article. 3. Measures based on this article shall not entail harmonization of member states' laws or regulations in cases where the Constitution excludes such harmonization. Title IV. The Union's Institutions and Bodies. Chapter I. The Institutional Framework. Article I-19. The Union's Institutions. 1. The Union shall have an institutional framework, which shall aim to promote its values, advance its objectives, serve its interests, those of its citizens, and those of the member states, ensure the consistency, effectiveness and continuity of its policies and actions. This institutional framework comprises the European Parliament, the European Council, the Council of Ministers, hereinafter referred to as the Council, 24 Part I, the European Commission, hereinafter referred to as the Commission, the Court of Justice of the European Union. 2. Each institution shall act within the limits of the powers conferred on it in the Constitution and in conformity with the procedures and conditions set out in it. The institutions shall practice mutual sincere cooperation. Article I-20. The European Parliament. 1. The European Parliament shall, jointly with the Council, exercise legislative and budgetary functions. It shall exercise functions of political control and consultation as laid down in the Constitution. It shall elect the President of the Commission. 2. The European Parliament shall be composed of representatives of the Union citizens. They shall not exceed 750 in number. Representation of citizens shall be digressively proportional, with a minimum threshold of 6 members per member state. No member state shall be allocated more than 96 seats. The European Council shall adopt by unanimity, on the initiative of the European Parliament, and with its consent, a European decision, establishing the composition of the European Parliament, respecting the principles referred to in the first subparagraph. 3. The members of the European Parliament shall be elected for a term of 5 years by direct universal suffrage in a free and secret ballot. 4. The European Parliament shall elect its president and its officers from among its members. Article I-21. The European Council. 1. The European Council shall provide the Union with the necessary impetus for its development, and shall define the general political directions and priorities thereof. It shall not exercise legislative functions. 2. The European Council shall consist of the heads of state or government of the member states, together with its president, and the president of the Commission. The Union Minister for Foreign Affairs shall take part in its work. 3. The European Council shall meet quarterly, convened by its president. When the agenda so requires, the members of the European Council may decide each to be assisted by a minister, and, in the case of the president of the Commission, by a member of the Commission. When the situation so requires, the president shall convene a special meeting of the European Council. 4. Except where the Constitution provides otherwise, decisions of the European Council shall be taken by consensus. Treaty establishing a Constitution for Europe 25 Article I-22. The European Council President 1. The European Council shall elect its president, by a qualified majority, for a term of 2.5 years, renewable once. In the event of an impediment, or serious misconduct, the European Council can end his or her term of office in accordance with the same procedure. 2. The President of the European Council, A. shall chair it, and drive forward its work, B. shall ensure the preparation and continuity of the work of the European Council in cooperation with the President of the Commission, and on the basis of the work of the General Affairs Council, C. shall endeavor to facilitate cohesion and consensus within the European Council, D. shall present a report to the European Parliament after each of the meetings of the European Council. The President of the European Council shall, at his or her level, and in that capacity, ensure the external representation of the Union on issues concerning its common foreign and security policy, without prejudice to the powers of the Union Minister for Foreign Affairs. 3. The President of the European Council shall not hold a national office. Article